Well, yeah, I don't have my badge anymore, but I guess I've met most of you uh, since in the last 24 hours. So most of you probably know that I'm from New Jersey. But in the mid 90s, I was living in South Jersey, which is different than, yeah, North. Thank you. Anyway, so in the mid 90s, I was living in Southern California. I was in Santa Ana. I was working for a newspaper there, and I was covering courts. And when you cover courts, you write a lot about death, intentional death, accidental death, and when you write about people who've died, you realize that very few of them expected to die when they did, at least in these cases. And when you write about people, when you learn more about their lives, you also learn that you're not much different than they are. And what happened to them could happen to you too. And I began to think, well, was what I was doing then, it was kind of, I had a sort of outwardly successful career in a way, but was it what I wanted to be doing if I were going to die the next day? And it wasn't. And I kept thinking, well, what is it what I really want to do? And I had wanted to travel more, but I had also wanted to try to live abroad. I'd never lived abroad. I wanted to learn a language to fluency. I messed around with a couple languages to intermediacy. And I wanted to write things other than news stories, essays, some short fiction. You know, I never thought of a book per se, but I just wanted to. So I left the United States. I decided to make a break. I quit my job and I moved. I took a first step and I moved to Moscow. And I'm saying all this just to let you know that when I moved to Russia, I had no idea what the banya was. My only experiences with saunas, so to speak, was my grandmom took me when I was a little boy to like the YMCA, and you know, it was just a few times. But you know, there's kind of like the really foggy sauna that, you know, there's some strange older European man shaving, and you know, and my generation anyway, when we heard the word bathhouse, we tended to think sex. At least, you know, that was what was happening in the States. So it was new to me. And Moscow was new to me too. 1996, when I moved there, it was a very interesting time. It was very chaotic. It was a little bit scary. It was very exhausting, and it was very exciting. And I loved being there because for a long time, for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was living in the moment. And so, you know, it almost gives me goosebumps to remember it. But at the same time, it was exciting and good. It was also difficult. It was a hard place to live for Russians more than me. You know, I had, at least, even though I didn't use my out, I sort of had an out. I could leave. And a lot of other people couldn't. And so what I found, the longer I stayed there, I met some friends, and one day someone took me to the banya because, you know, he'd been going ever since he was a little boy. And that's what you did once a week. And I can't say that I loved it right away, but it was very interesting. And I remember feeling better afterwards. And I remember feeling that whatever it was I brought with me to the banya was gone when I left. I mean, dark thoughts, stresses. I think I had a rash under one of my underarms or something, you know, like a little back pain. All I know is it just felt light. I felt light. I looked better. Not, you know, not that I was that vain to you know, really inspecting, but I noticed. And I began to get more interested, and I began to check out. I started to get some work as a reporter, and I started to travel around the country. And everywhere I went, I would search out the best steam. And in Moscow, I did the same thing. It's a lot like Helsinki now, actually, in Moscow. There used to be a lot more public baths, and they're closing. They're just being basically torn down so people can build up more profitable enterprises. But my friends and I, we tried out every single one, and we settled on one bathhouse, and as our regular. And we would go every Sunday. And I'll just give you a quick sense of it. The stove is, at least from this wall to that wall near the door, it was that long, about 1.5 times as high. And inside the stove was 14 tons of pig iron cylinders that they would heat up.
I remember those. Around, they look like cannonballs.
These were like long tubes.
Oh, they were tubes.
Yeah,
I
but round. Yeah. There's a word for it in English, I forget. But they would heat them up with a gas stove overnight till red hot, like it looks like mercurochrome red, that hot. And then they'd shut off the gas in the mornings, and that pig iron would hold the heat. And to throw water in the stove, you need to open a door. It's about this high. It looks like a submarine torpedo room door. It's so big it makes this noise. It's very heavy metal. You need these special gloves. And you wouldn't throw like a ladle of water. You would throw like a third of a basin. Maybe even more than a dozen times just to make one steam. But it was a wonderful thing, and it was very freaky in the sense that I've only seen this once in Russia. They had a propeller underneath the ceiling. And this was something attached to a tube, a pipe. And you would stand there and you'd move it. Because what you do when you finish one steam to make another one, you open a big window in the wall and you open the door. And one direction, you move the propeller, it pushes the stale air out. You move it the other direction, it pulls the fresh air in. And so that way you can bring the steam room down to neutral and make the steam you want, or as close to neutral. And it had this one great guy. Would you be able to show the first image there?
This one?
Yeah, this guy. This is the mock-up of my book cover. I just got it before I came here, so it's not super high quality. But this guy in the middle is Grisha, Grigori, and he was the barilshik, the steam maker at our banya. And people would come on Sundays. He worked there for 2 hours, and it was people came from all over Moscow, sometimes even the suburbs, for his steam. Anyway, it became a ritual. My friends and I went, and we'd invite other people visiting from other towns, Russians. Sometimes we'd have 6, 7 different nationalities, ethnicities present. It was a survival ritual, frankly. And I break the book down into, I am going to read twice to you. So I don't have too many audio visuals here, but I'm going to read a little bit from the beginnings of 2 chapters. Each beginning is about 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And this is the beginning of a chapter that talks about my Moscow banya ritual on Sundays. My shoulder is beneath my pillow. My forearm is beneath her pillow. I am awake, alert. She is in sleep deeply. I can tell because I feel the dream she is dreaming, the swell of its heat between her lower back and my stomach. I breathe slow, intentional breaths to prolong the moment and capture the scent, her scent, from beneath the chestnut hairs piled loosely at her neck. I look past her bare shoulder, past the double-paned windows, toward the still tops of the birch trees, reflecting white moonlight in the dark blue of morning. She could be one of the ones, I think. She could be the last of the ones. I know it is not for me to question where and when people come into my life, but I wonder why Yulia has come into mine when I'm on the cusp of going, why we are starting something in the same place I am ending almost everything. When she walked into the coffee house while she stood in line after she sat down next to me at the only free table in the place, I felt sparks. I often feel electricity with women. But rarely sparks. They seemed so unequivocal when they came, as if daring me to doubt something was there, something special. With Yulia, I do not yet know what that something is, and I do not even guess, for if living in Russia has taught me anything, it is not to look far beyond the moment. I got sparks, now I am risking my heart to find out why. So far, things feel as right as her body, small and calm and certain against mine. I lift my arm from her hip and place it, fold it, on top of hers as if to reassure her. She is sleeping. I did so, I realize, to reassure myself. The alarm clock sounds, and I roll over, pick it up, shut it off. I roll back slowly. I move close, but our bodies no longer quite fit. The heat has gone away, has somehow gotten lost. Another alarm clock sounds, and I roll over again, reach to the floor, turn it off, the alarm on the second clock. I set 2 alarms because we fell asleep only a few hours ago, and today is Sunday. Most of Moscow sleeps in on Sundays, but I never do. I rise early to meet friends at a Russian bathhouse or banya, even when it is dark and icy outdoors, and indoors a warm, lithe body is bowed against mine. I have been living in Moscow for more than 11 years. One of the constants in my life has been the inconstancy of my relationships, the departures of friends and of lovers. Another has been the durability of my Sunday survival ritual. The Ruskaya Banya rejuvenates me, keeps me healthy. It quiets my mind when I think too much, when I allow myself to feel anxious about having entered my 40s without a stable career, a partner, a home. Some days the banya is everything I need to feel good about the world after a week spent reporting on much that is not. Friends and I have been going to the same bathhouse for several years. We have tried, we think, every other public bathhouse in the Russian capital, every single one. And while just about everything associated with the banya is subject to argument, this is not. For 2 hours on Sunday mornings, we luxuriate in the best steam in the city. Some go to church on Sundays. I go to the banya. Yulia is about to find that out. So, typical Sunday morning in Moscow.
Yeah. In your dreams.
My wife works on Sundays because all my life, I married for 40 years, I go to Bryon.
So, I guess you noticed in the chapter, if you, that in that little section that I talk about I'm leaving. And this book came about because I was ready to leave. You know, it's just like a feeling more than anything, kind of like a calling. In fact, I wanted to say something, well, I'll do that toward the end. But I had done everything, I thought, except the last part. I mean, it was such a lucky time for me to be there. Being a reporter, that I was able to go to, I was sent to like 40-some countries. I learned Russian fluently. I wrote some stuff, some short fiction, some essays, but I realized that I needed to do something more. And I think it was realized that that last part is why the idea came for me for the book. And I think I already mentioned this, but in case I didn't, during all my travels, it became clear to me that Russia, the banya was definitely the most Russian thing there is. And it's very similar to the Finnish sauna in some ways. Traditionally, Russians were born in banyas, and they were anointed and washed before they were put in the ground. But they also have wedding rituals as well. The day before you get married, the bride steams with her girlfriends. They're fairly actually elaborate rituals. The guys do steam with their guy friends too, but they're not quite as elaborate. And the day after you get married, you steam together as a couple. And so it's like every major traditional transition in human life takes place in the steam room, you know. And not only that, it's the most magical place in Russia, like literally. A bathhouse at midnight is the most powerful place to perform magic. People still do perform magic despite all the Russian Orthodoxy noise coming out. It's kind of a hybrid sort of faith that there's now. And you know, if you've read Tolstoy, War and Peace, or Pushkin's Eugene Onegin, there are scenes of girls divining their fortunes, but a sort of benign magic in banyas and bathhouses. So, and there's also a sprite in the Russian banya, sort of like the Finnish sauna, but it's not really a sprite. It's called the banik, as Mikkel said, and it's not your friend. It's a little dangerous. You would never go to a banya and steam at night. That's why a lot of the fortune telling and magic is done at the scary time. And you never leave, like, if you're a woman, you never leave a woman with a newborn, for example. And you know, I could talk a lot about it, but what I found was that ultimately the banya is it's a crossroads between the natural and unnatural worlds, and it just fascinated me. So basically what I did, I broke the book down into chapters. One was my Sunday Moscow Banya ritual. Only 5 chapters. They're kind of long, and they're like episodes, from several hours to several days. And one, I would travel to the far north, a place called Arkhangelsk, which is like a Banya Mecca, has the most Banyas per capita in Russia, but they're terribly mismanaged, very corrupt, mostly closed. And I end up just sort of hopping on a plane to the Solovetsky Islands, which is where this monastery is. It's one of the most holy places in Orthodoxy. It's also the mother of the Gulag. And so this monk befriends me and shows me the little secret monk banya. Anyway, I traveled to the Urals as well, and there was, I strayed from my notes a bit, I'm sorry. So, but also in Russia there's the black banya, which is quite similar to the smoke sauna. They're basically the same thing. And one of the chapters is a trip I take to Chuvashia to steam in a black banya or a smoke banya. And I'd just like to read a little bit from that. It's my last reading. We would be excuse me. It's about 3 minutes. We would be resting between steams, our hair wet, our skin flushed, our backs slumped against benches, our chests rising and falling with a slow, pleasant fatigue from swings in temperature, hot to cold to hot to cold. We would talk about our jobs and our loves. We would talk about ourselves, too, when we were able to see ourselves as independent from work or women. Sometimes we would talk about what we were feeling, not emotions so much as the physical sensations common to our chosen bathhouse in Moscow. Was the steam dry enough, soft enough, light enough? Were our senses aroused more, say, by the aroma of beer with reassuring overtones of mustard, or that of wormwood with slashing accents of peppermint? Sometimes, when the steam was just right, we would not talk at all. Great steam, like great art, has the power to bring on quiet. Such moments for me were a rejuvenating confluence of communion with myself, with others, with the divine. Every so often, though, these spells of good feeling would be broken by declarations from other bathers, always Russian, that what we were experiencing, in fact, was not special. You call this a banya? This isn't a banya. This isn't a banya. There's only one true Russian banya, the black banya.
This is sounding familiar.
The steam here is good. I won't dispute that. I won't. But you'll never know what steam truly is until you steamed in a real Russian banya, until you've steamed black style. Black style is Pechornamo, you call it. Anyway, most of it was hearsay I knew. More Russians have seen the Yeti than have steamed in a black banya. Black banyas are nearly extinct. They just barely exist. They're the truest link to the ancient Slavic steam baths of another millennium. Black banyas are black because they do not have chimneys. Literally, they're black. The ceiling and interior walls are caked with soot from smoke. I have never appreciated being ripped out of a moment by someone telling me that there was a better moment elsewhere to be had. Over time, though, the remarks of other bathers caused the vision in my mind of a dingy, soot-encrusted black banya to shimmer with the enchanting sheen of myth. Over time, I came to regard my appreciation for the Russian cult of steam a bit like Cicero regarded his history. Not to know what happened before one was born is always to be a child. Knowledge and awareness are not peers of experience. Like the dismissive remarks of the other bathers, there are only so much hearsay. I decided to find a black banya and to steam in it. I think I might just stop there.
You want to show the two pictures?
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, your friend.
You know, as if we haven't had enough full frontal the last 24 hours.
Sorry.
Wrong file. This is the same guy you saw almost naked on the front. And the reason I'm showing it is when, this is from the banya we went to every Sunday in Moscow. And I don't know if everyone can see, but this, what happens, it gets quite hot. You know, I should remember because I measured it, but there's no thermometer that measures how hot it gets at the ceiling. It exceeds all my measuring capabilities. So what happens, if you see this wand, if you think of like the Roman Empire kind of thing, or some kind of emperor being fanned, well, that's what, after we make a steam, you'll sprinkle oils onto the fabric. And sometimes you might make a steam, like yesterday, Mikhail tried beer. So you might have a steam with a general beer scent. But you might put, say, peppermint or pine even, maybe even lemon oil on the wand. And you walk in and you sort of just run it over the heads and across the bodies of people. And you get this wave. Not only does it feel like an air massage, I mean, sometimes it's a little intense. Sometimes you squint your eyes, sometimes, but then when it moves, it's fleeting and it's gone. And then you have like these feelings like, ooh, you know what I'm saying? And so he would walk in and do that. But when you move your arms through the heat at that temperature, it gets quite hot. You have to wear gloves. And it would get hot, your head too, because you're standing when everyone else is sitting, and it's going through the hottest part of the steam room. So we used to call it Grisha the Executioner. And it scared a lot of foreigners who came the first time. They're like, here comes this guy. But that's in the washroom at our banya. And I have one more just of Grisha and me. Yeah. And I was in a little bit better shape. That was 5 years ago, pre-America. But anyway, but he figures in one of the chapters. And I'll just say quickly, how are we on time? Okay, minute and a half. Yeah, I came back to this country, and you know, it's really bad for journalists now, and it was 5 years ago. It's probably still worse now. And not only did I just feel lost kind of anyway, I wasn't making any money. I wasn't finding I could find work, but I couldn't find work that paid money. I still have trouble with that. And, you know, people used to ask me where I was from. In my town I grew up in, I stayed with my mom when I first came back because I didn't have a job. And I felt I was home, but it didn't feel like home, you know? And there's this one banya outside Philadelphia, and I just sort of started going. It was my survival ritual in Russia, and it became my sort of survival ritual in America too. And what we have, and I started going by myself, and the thing I missed was friends. I missed that communion. And so I started asking people. We have a Facebook and group, and now it was like 6 people a few years ago. Now we have like 120. And I make the steam for people now because it's not interesting to just sit there, you know. So I'm kind of filling Grisha's role. And what's really, I found that works among Americans, spreading this, you know, what we're talking about here, is word of mouth. I mean, I had a website. I had some chapters from my book excerpted in literary journals. I had things that would otherwise bring attention, but the only thing that really did was the people who would come and they'd say, "Hey," to 2 friends, and then they bring the 2 friends next time. They would say, and it's slow. It's not great, but they keep coming, and that's the one thing that works. So social media, and that's how we stay in touch, is social media. So that's one thing that I think.
One soul at a time. One soul at a time. Thank you, Bryon.